studio.
You are listening to
Mississippi's #1 sports talk show, The Out of Bounds Show with Bo Bounds. Streaming worldwide live on the Out of Bounds radio app and on your radio at ESPN 105.9. The Zone.
The Out of Bounds Show, brought to you by the Great Steaks at Kessler Prime and the Renaissance. Visit KesslerPrime.com to make a reservation. You're listening to 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. We just received a great text on Texas and Oklahoma. We're going to ask our next guest about them, too. But Brian weighs in on the Mississippi Ag text line. The Texas Longhorns are like that girl you meet at the dock at 1 a.m. You think she's a 10, but just a few hours later, you realize she is a hard 6 or soft 7 at best.
It always comes back to the dock. I've told you that.
It's unbelievable.
Always comes back to the dock.
Unbelievable. Our guests join us on the Modelo guest line. We welcome in Steve Robertson, the Boneyard Podcast, genespage.com. And Steve joins us on the Out of Bounds Show. Steve, your thoughts on Oklahoma and Texas joining the SEC party?
Well, I think Texas, that girl from Texas also, you take her to the Waffle House on the way home and you go in there and sit down and everybody knows her. You know, that's one thing you got to be careful with, too. It's not about, it's kind of like going to a strip club. You know, you go in there, everything looks great, but you got to be awfully careful what you bring home with you. And that's some of the concern, I think, with Texas, because they've been so toxic over the years. You know, they ruined the Southwest Conference. They ruined the Big 12. And they're not going to be able to come to the SEC and run the show. And that's what's going to be interesting from a cultural standpoint. You know, nothing's going to happen in this league without Alabama, Florida, and Georgia signing off on it. And so Texas is not going to be able to come bully the other schools in the league. And will they come in here and be a good team player, or will they come in here and have a sense of entitlement? That's the things that concern me.
No, I think that's a great point, Steve. And if I had to guess, Sankey has been clear that we run the show and not one school does. And as you said, Bama, Florida, and Georgia carry a big stick at the table. But the SEC has never been run like that. And I think Texas will actually abide by, I think, the SEC way and probably how Sankey has laid it out to them. Your thoughts?
Yeah, you certainly hope so. And that's the thing. I don't think anybody has any apprehension really about Oklahoma coming in. They just don't have, that type of stigma about them, But here's the deal. When you look at this from a financial standpoint, I've seen some of the numbers, and they're staggering. First it was estimated that each school would rake in close to $20 million more. Now some of the estimates suggest it could be as many as $40 million more. And when you're a school like Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and others, it's not just from a football standpoint. Now you can use that money to help, improve your facilities in your Olympic sports and in baseball and things of that nature. And listen, it's not going to get State and Ole Miss closer to LSU, Alabama, but it is going to allow State and Ole Miss to get some separation from teams like NC State, Louisville, teams that they recruit against regularly. I mean, you have a bit of an advantage facility-wise now, but can you imagine what it'll be in 10 years?
I think you're on to something there. Steve Robertson on the Modelo guest line. Steve, I've got it as slightly less difficult because they will not have to play Bama every year, Mississippi State and Ole Miss going forward. So I'm giving you three options. Do you think it's slightly more difficult to win in football, slightly less difficult, or negligible as once they get in the league in football for the Dogs and the Reps?
Well, I think it's going to be slightly easier. And the reason that I say that is kind of goes along with what you're saying now. I mean, it's like the casual fan thinks, well, State and Ole Miss are going to have to play Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Texas, and Oklahoma every year. That's just not true. That's just not how that's going to work. And if this four-pod system is rolled out, if it's being advertised, and you're going to be able to avoid some of the blue bloods each and every year. Now, there'll be a year when you have a loaded schedule. But I think by and large, the commitment financially is going to allow you to upgrade your facilities. And I think probably the one thing nobody's talking about, you're not going to lose coaches. You're not going to be outbid for coaches. And so, and that's not just in football, but in other sports too. And how many times do you see a coach come in and, do a good job, and next thing you know, they leave for a bigger program because it's a bigger payday. And so now you're going to have more salary dollars available to you to retain coaches, not just head coaches, but assistant coaches as well.
Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds show. He joins us on the Modelo guest line, the Boneyard podcast. You can find it on all the platforms, Apple, Spotify, and Podbean, and so on. Steve, what about – let's switch gears here. Now that we've had a few weeks to exhale and breathe, kind of frame up what you're seeing the baseball national title is doing right now for the school, for maybe the baseball program, and what it could maybe continue to do for both going forward.
Well, the first thing that I'll say is that I've been told that Mississippi State and Chris Lemonis are very, very, very close to announcing a new contract extension for Lemonis. That's something that was actually maybe in negotiations prior to the trip to the College World Series, and surely the price of poker has gone up since then. But I think you're going to see an announcement on that very, very, very soon, possibly as early as today. But also, when you look at the transfer market, Mississippi State is really in a position where it is a buyer's market. That's how you get guys like R.J. Yeager from Mercer. That's how you get Jess Davis from UAB. It's because now that you've done it, there are a lot of these, guys that are difference makers in the transfer portal that say, hey, well, listen, if I got a chance to legitimately go win a national championship there and certainly go to Omaha, that's where I want to go. And so you're seeing it on the recruiting end, I think, more so than anywhere else. Not that the State hadn't recruited well in years past. They certainly have. But I think you're about to see recruiting hit a different level for State because of the fact Lemonis can afford to be a little pickier.
How many more transfers out of the transfer portal? 2, 3? What are you hearing?
That's a good question. I think, you've got a huge class coming in. I think you're looking at 20 newcomers. Maybe if they can find, a quality left-handed arm, obviously with Houston Harding moving on, that kind of it creates a bit of a gap there. You'd like to be able to have a guy that can come in and chew up some left-handed bats. And so if they can find a quality guy, not just a guy, but I think if they can find a guy that's a difference maker, you got to go make that move if you can get a left-handed arm somewhere.
I want to go back to R.J. Yeager. He was an absolute stud in the regionals. This guy could be a big-time playmaker out of Mercer to Mississippi State. How does that work with Lane Forsythe and R.J. Yeager transferring in from Mercer? Who do you think grabs second base? Who grabs shortstop?
Well, I think Forsythe is well ahead of him defensively. He doesn't have the same offensive tools, but I think Yeager probably, if I had to call it today, is probably your second baseman. He's played every inning of his college career at short, so you kind of got to get that turn down. It's a little different over there at second, but he doesn't. I don't think he's quite as consistent defensively as Forsythe, and I think Forsythe's best days are ahead of him. But when you add Yeager to a lineup, that's another double-digit home run guy. You're already expecting Cam James and Hancock and Kellum Clark and Logan Tanner, possibly Brad Cumbest. You're looking at potentially 5 double-digit home run guys again. You add a 6th guy in there, it really adds some length to the lineup. But I think they'll come in and compete, and the best guy will start at short. But, I would say Cam James, all his guys are in that mix, and the best guy will play. But nobody's guaranteed anything. But I think with what happened with Scotty DeBrule last year, I think it makes you more of a destination type consideration for guys because I think he's the guy that can come in and play second base and make you a better team immediately.
Steve, I've got about 30 seconds. Brad Cumbest, I saw him in a sling or whatever with his arm that got hurt. There were rumors he wasn't going to play football. So he is going to play football this year?
Yeah, the understanding I have is he'll play football one more year, and it's probably a good chance he gets drafted in baseball next year. So then we won't have this discussion next summer. But, yeah, I expect him to be part of the football program this fall.
Wow. Going to be a lot of what might have been with him not going through fall ball in baseball. But I don't blame him. You got to do what you got to do. Steve, thanks. Steve Robertson, genespage.com, the Boneyard Podcast, joining us on the Modelo guest line. It is a Taco Tuesday, brought to you by Modelo. Back in a sec.